Okay. Hello. Welcome in, everybody. It is Thursday, March 30th, second to last day of March, opening day in Major League Baseball. Hope you've all enjoyed so far. Brendan Glasheen, Gary and Thorne, Thursday edition of the Slate. We are a DraftKings show. We take you up until 6 o'clock. Basically, with this show, if you're new to it, we take anything we're fortunate right now. There's actually games happening as we talk, which doesn't happen often. The NCAA tournament, I guess, would be a good example. We don't do a ton of college on this show, but anything late breaking and slate previewing are some big things that we do for the purposes of this program. So baseball has gifted us with so many games today, which is helpful because we can talk about games that are happening in the next 2 hours or so. And there are games happening right now, like the Phillies and the Rangers and the Mets and Marlins, Twins, Royals, Pirates, Reds, Blue Jays, Cardinals, all happening right now. 5 games in progress. But there were some games earlier in the day. Garian's got plays for later. And we just want to talk about the day. There was some news, too. The Justin Verlander thing is not good for the Mets. Not good. We'll get into that. But what have you made of the day so far, Garian? We're out of spring training. The games count for real. There's the nostalgia, of course, but I'm good with that. I think everyone can do their own nostalgia time on their own time. What have you made of the rules and how the games have flowed so far? Do you find yourself watching the game a little bit differently today?
I mean, I guess a little bit. I think in general, I was always pro at least the pitch clock. I still have some issue with the restrictions on the shifts. I just think that you shouldn't be able to sort of circumvent what is just good strategic defensive game planning. But I think that the pitch clock is the thing that most people were worried about today. If you'd watched the first week of spring training, there was that very notable game, I think, between the Red Sox and the Braves.
The Braves, yep.
The game actually ended on a pitch clock violation, and everyone was freaking out. This is the baseball dystopia that we've all millennials wanted, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's fine. I mean, we were kind of joking before we even started the show. Like, the Red Sox and Orioles just played a 10-9 game with so many pitching changes, with so many walks. I mean, a classic Red Sox game, just walk after walk after walk. And it still only took like 3 hours and 25 minutes. I mean,
right. That's progress.
Purposes of what we're doing now with baseball. But I mean, that's not a very long Red Sox game, as you can definitely attest. I think it's good. I just think it's good. And I think that there were some obvious pitch clock violations that we had today. I think Marcus Stroman had the first one. I believe we had Rafael Devers strike out on a wasn't looking at the batter, wasn't looking at the pitcher's violation, and with 2 strikes, and that caused a strikeout. But there hasn't really been like an uproar or anything so far today. So I think it's been pretty positive.
You can see there's urgency. And I had them down south. They've got the Atlanta-Washington game on. You can see Patrick Corbin, one of those guys. Everybody, when you see him pop up on your app or you're going through the card for the day, and you see Patrick Corbin's pitching, you want to take the other side. I know that's one of the bets you cashed today. Braves first 5 team total over 2.5. It was at plus money. How is a really good question. And of course, I'm not going to go up here and tell you that it's free money, but we're not supposed to do that. But I'll tell you this: it's a good idea to look into Patrick Corbin's starts because he's not very good. If you saw his ERA and record from last year, and I didn't go on Fangraphs and break down and crunch the numbers. He's just not very good. And he was an opening day starter. Anywho, what I found myself doing watching the game, at least early on, from the very first pitch. Okay, where's the clock? Where's the pitch clock? Where's the pitch clock? Now, I don't see it in the stadium, but I could see it on the score bug that they show on the broadcast. And I couldn't take my eyes off it. So I found that kind of neat because it reminded me of watching an NFL Sunday. And you watch the play clock before the snap. Now, football, of course, there's a lot more rhythm to it. Down, set, go, quarterback throws, quarterback runs, incomplete pass, clock stops. Even a running back getting drilled down to the ground, clock stops. Okay, you chit chat with your friend. Okay, next play. Boom. It's just I like that. It's almost like therapy. There's a therapy angle to it that I found sort of refreshing. And it felt like, even though there wasn't action on every pitch, obviously, I felt inclined to make sure I'm watching, because here comes the pitch, here comes the clock, and Corbin came close a couple times with guys on base. That caught my attention. And then so that's the one game I had on. And the fun part about this too, and there was another violation earlier today. O'Neal Cruz hit a home run off Hunter Green. I think a batter before Green committed a pitch violation on an 0-2 count, or a pitch clock violation, and then Green, O'Neal hit a home run off Green. As he rounded second, he looked at his watch to make a joke about, yep, you didn't pay attention to the clock. So that to me is a sign that guys are embracing it. And I think so far, so good. Someone is going to complain about it and not be happy about it. We saw the whole thing with the Real Muto and Craig Kimbrell at the end of spring training. That was, I thought it was pretty comical, but good. The umpires have to put their foot down to some degree here. So, and the other thing, I saw Steve Buchanan tweet this. It was a great point too. The stolen bases were a factor early in the day, right? We had 3 stolen bases in the first 2 games early on.
Yeah.
Granted, there are some guys that have been historically good at stealing bases, but they're encouraging aggression on the base paths, and I find that good.
Yeah, it was almost I was making a joke with a couple friends. It was almost like the league paid off Patrick Corbin to immediately use both of his pickoff attempts against Ronald Acuna as soon as Acuna reached base in the first inning of the first game, just to give everyone the opportunity to remind themselves, like, okay, this is how the new rules work. Once you've thrown over twice, you can still throw over, but if you don't get that guy out, it's a balk. And then immediately Acuna tries to take off the next pitch, trips and falls, so he has to go back, and then steals it on the next pitch. Like you're saying, I know like Jorge Mateo stole a couple bases today, Acuna. These are guys we expected to maybe be a lot more active on the base paths. I think Reese McGuire stole a base. I'm not quite sure what the context of that was, but yeah, I think stolen bases are going to be up. We saw it throughout the spring training, where I believe last season in spring training, teams were averaging about like 1.7 steals per game, and it was up well over 2 steals per game this season. Look, I just think in general, this is good for the game. I think there's more action. Like you said, I think it really does give a rhythm to some of these at bats, and it's a rhythm we'll all have to get used to. I mean, I was caught at one point, like getting up to get a glass of water and realizing like, oh, I don't have the same amount of time to do this as I used to in between pitches, because guys aren't even leaving the batter's box anymore. And I think that's like a big part of this. It's the Nomar Garcia Parras of the world taking 25 seconds between pitches. Like, we don't need that. It just slows down the game so much. And that's really where I think people get lost in recent years. It's just such a slow game sometimes, even though these athletes are incredibly dynamic and fast. And I mean, you talked about the O'Neal Cruz home run after the pitch clock violation. Like, that was just a microcosm of a great thing for baseball in an at bat. You had these new rules kind of being implemented and coming to the forefront. And then you just had 2 of the young stars of this game. Like O'Neal Cruz, you talked about the celebration. That's such a great thing with the younger generation of baseball players who legitimately want to be stars. I mean, this is the thing we always talked about. The problem with marketing baseball was the best baseball player in the world, Mike Trout, you couldn't pick him out of a lineup. He's like the least charismatic guy in the world. And he doesn't want to be charismatic. So that's fine. That's good for him. Now, obviously, Shohei Ohtani is that guy, and he is oozing with charisma. But you've got guys like O'Neal Cruz and Ronald Acuna Jr. who are not afraid to go out and play with some swag. Fernando Tatis Jr. And then him homering off of Hunter Green, who was basically throwing 101 miles per hour every single pitch of that game, the first couple innings. Like, that's great for baseball. And I think too, when people talk about, oh, I'm being distracted by the pitch clock, it's taking away from my experience. Maybe guys who only watch baseball are going to find this a little annoying and find it hard to come to terms with. But you said it reminded you of a lot of watching football, watching basketball too. Like, obviously, as you're watching in the corner of your eye, you're like, oh man, there's only 5 seconds left in the shot clock. Like, this is part of watching sports. Have it be timed, these possessions be timed. I think we're all going to get used to it pretty quickly. And even if it does impact games in important ways, like let's not pretend that these clock violations don't impact massive games in the NFL and in NBA. I mean,
right.
Dolphins Bills playoff game this season in the wildcard round basically came down to Mike McDaniel having a delay of game penalty in a giant clutch 4th and 1 situation. Like, who was complaining then? Like, just because it's been a rule for so long that we've all accepted. So people will get over it. People start to like it because these games will be faster. And again, I'm for it. I'm 100% behind it.
I think the pitch clock too, at least, and you brought up like delay of games, like they're self-inflicted. It's hard to get an official or an umpire in trouble when the rules are put in place. Now the umpires have to hold themselves to that standard of keeping the game moving. And we've seen examples of that in the spring. But at the end of the day, you've only got yourself to blame. And I thought for Patrick Corbin, we're dumping on him here, but I thought there was a situation when the Braves got on the board early. He found himself kind of pressing a bit, fell behind an account, and he just got right back on the rubber and threw a breaking ball. And I think he struck out Olsen in that inning, and he struck out somebody else. I can't remember who it was, but maybe just less thinking. And I think, and you said something too, and maybe I think you were getting at this, so I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but, and this is something, it's probably repetitive and regurgitating a bit, but the batters caused this from the get-go, I think. And then what happened was the pitchers were like, okay, you're going to take your time and keep calling timeout. I'm going to do laps around the rubber. Grab the
like starters generally weren't the problem. There were a couple guys, but it's mostly like the late game relievers who were, if you want to point a finger at the pitchers, that's maybe the guys you start with. It's the closers, it's the 8th inning guys. Pedro Baez, every single playoff run for the Dodgers the last 10 years. Like you can play some blame there too,
that in New England.
The batters were really starting to take advantage of these rules.
Right. I can't wait to see Kenley Jansen on a regular basis at the end of Red Sox games.
Yeah.
When they're down 1 or tied, because I don't think they're going to be leading much, but we'll see. But Kenley Jansen, now relievers, I get it. And that's the purist angle I can understand, like from a purist standpoint. Like tight spot, coming in, runners on, the time between pitches, some drama there that I think could be neglected because of the clock. So I get that for sure. So and by the way, I like to mention that the Phillies and the Rangers are now tied 5-5. When we started the show, it was a 5-1 game. Jacob deGrom just got lit up. I was starting to think, well, with what happened with deGrom going to Texas and Justin Verlander heading to New York with Max Scherzer, well, seeing this Verlander news, I'm thinking, yep, Jacob deGrom now is just going to absolutely shine with the Texas Rangers, and he's going to throw 200 innings this year because that's just how it goes for the Mets. It makes me curious now why LaMarca's not here today. I guess LaMarca's more of a Friday guy. I started to think maybe LaMarca didn't show up because he saw this Verlander news. And if you're not aware, good job by the Mets a little bit. I think it's not going to escape baseball fans, but the Mets buried this today. I think they buried it in the first 2 afternoon games. Oh, and I didn't even mention Aaron Judge goes yard, first home run of the year. Aaron Judge, like picking up where he left off, like so perfect against the Giants. Against the Giants, the team that was apparently interested in him he was interested in them. He took a meeting with them. So the Giants were legitimately in on Aaron Judge, and he decided to stay in New York. Mets tweet this at 1:44 p.m.
Legitimately thought he signed with the Giants. So.
It's true. It's true. Mets, 1:44 today. New York Mets, at Mets, the official Mets Twitter. Justin Verlander will be placed on the IL with a low-grade teres major strain.
Shoulder strain. Okay.
I've never read it like that. He will continue throwing at moderate intensity, and we will rescan in a week. We will provide an update at that time. Oh, boy. Everything's breaking the Braves way. The Braves won today. They're playing the Nationals to open their season. Edwin Diaz, baseball classic, injured. Rhys Hoskins, ACL, out for the year. And back to the Mets. It's like they're doing a snake draft. So what's happening now to the Phillies? It's not good. for the Mets.
Yeah.
They kind of went all in with these older starting pitchers, and one of them, who is a Cy Young winner, coming over from a winning pedigree in Houston, Justin Verlander. This doesn't sound great. This doesn't sound good.
No, it's bad. And look, I'm not gonna say that I think they're sugarcoating this a little bit, because they're not lying so much as they're just not telling the whole truth with this timeline stuff. And a lot of teams do this. Like, I know there's been a lot of talk recently about the Paul George injury timeline for the Clippers, where it was like, oh yeah, he'll be reevaluated in 2 to 3 weeks. And some people read that and they think, oh, Paul George is going to be out 2 to 3 weeks. No. He'll be reevaluated in 2 to 3 weeks. We don't know what that means. That doesn't guarantee any sort of timeline. Where this exact injury we've seen twice in the past 3 days now. Tristan McKenzie of the Guardians, a promising young right-handed pitcher, was placed on the IL this morning with the exact same injury to his right arm. The Guardians said they would reevaluate in 2 weeks, and they likely weren't going to see him for 2 months. Now, part of this isn't just like he's not going to throw a baseball for 2 months. It's the start of the season. These guys just got built up, and now they're going to miss a couple weeks, and they have to get rebuilt up again. So if you see the Verlander stuff and you're like, oh, well, whatever, he's going to be reevaluated in a week. He's on the 15-day IL. He's going to miss 3 starts. Big whoop. I don't know, man. I don't think we see Verlander pitch till May at the earliest. And that might even be optimistic. And this was always going to be the worry in the way they built this team. Now, again, you ask most major league GMs, if Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer were willing to sign with your franchise, would you do it? I think 30 out of 30 would say yes. But we saw this with like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this season. At a certain point, no matter how great the person is, no matter how great the athlete is, they just hit a wall. I mean, think about LeBron James. How often did we talk about LeBron James and just his uncanny ability to stay healthy all the time? He was the most indestructible superstar we'd ever seen. He used to sprain his ankle. Like, literally, you would see like the tendons almost like tear. And he'd be somehow back out on the court in 20 minutes playing like LeBron James again. He was just a robot. Now he's 37 and he gets hurt a lot because he's 37. That's just how this works. So the Mets, obviously you don't plan on Edwin Diaz getting hurt celebrating a victory in the World Baseball Classic, but I'm sure they thought that this was going to be a possibility. I think if you had asked the Mets before the season, what's a realistic expectation of starts and innings for Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander, they would have been happy with 25 starts from each of those guys. And to the Mets' credit, they do have a little bit more pitching depth than most organizations. Obviously, Jose Quintana getting hurt in the spring training sessions is not great for that either. But someone like David Peterson is a really, really solid fill-in replacement. Tyler McGill is also a relatively solid replacement level MLB pitcher. Like, they've at least got some guys that can fill these innings. But you just hope that Verlander's back more towards the beginning of May than late May.
And we'll see what kind of start they get off to. They're winning against the Marlins right now. Sandy Alcantara on the mound for the Marlins. It's also something I love about opening day. You can track when all the aces are starting, except Patrick Corbin and Corey Kluber today, because it's opening day and most aces go. And by the way, I wanted to just backtrack for a second. The Rangers now lead the Phillies. It shows you how absent my mind is. And DeGrom started slow. Phillies took advantage, and now the Rangers are winning. DeGrom is pitching not for the Phillies. He's pitching for the Rangers. So DeGrom allowed runs early, and then he's getting picked up right now by his lineup. So the Rangers lead 6-5 in the 4th inning. So a lot of runs in that game, too. Starting to wonder, too, runs have not been – the Red Sox and the Orioles scored 19 runs combined today. Wonder if the clock from that standpoint, too, is it rushing pitchers, they're spotting pitches won't be as great, and there might be more. It leads back to stealing bases, more action, more hittable baseballs when the pitcher doesn't have as much time to pinpoint a pitch or shake off the catcher. Might be more mistakes for hitters and mistakes could lead to walks. Mistakes could lead to a bad spot with a breaking ball, and it's a double into the gap, something like that too. Location might be a problem for pitchers, which could lead to offense.
I mean, you've got pitchers calling their own pitches using PitchCom for the first time ever as well today. So there's a lot going on. I think
Yeah.
in certain cases that could definitely rattle a pitcher's confidence and maybe throw him off his game a little bit. But to be honest, like some of the bigger scoring environments we've seen today, I don't want to say they were predictable, but you look at that Red Sox Orioles game, obviously two of the weaker starting pitchers going to the mound in that contest. Two offenses, I think, that everyone thinks are going to be top half of the league offenses as well. So probably not overly surprising. Runs were scored in that contest. To see DeGrom and Nola give up this many runs is a little surprising. But even like Jays Cardinals right now is 5-3. Miles Michaelis, not exactly a stalwart ace by any means. Alek Manoah had a very good season last year, but that's also just maybe two of the three best lineups in baseball. So not surprising to see those teams put up runs in a vacuum. I think we've also just had some teams completely fail to score runs. We've had a couple shutouts already today. So we're seeing both ends of the spectrum.
So Gary's got some plays for today up on the DraftKings Nation, dknation.draftkings.com. One of his picks was the Braves team total over in the first 5, over 2.5 runs. Picking on Patrick Corbin. I'm reading the first sentence of your first blurb there. So that went well. You've got picks for later. We'll start with, let's just go to a full game one first. You like the Angels visiting the A's, and you're interested in taking the Angels on the run line with Shohei Ohtani on the bump.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like I just told everybody why that might be a good idea. The A's aren't very good. Ohtani's pitching. Angels are improved. But anyway, go on.
Look, I don't think it's going to catch anyone by surprise that I like the Angels in this game against Oakland. I've been on record that I think the Angels they were plus 155 yesterday to make the playoffs. I don't hate that bet. I know the Angels are kind of like a laughing stock. We constantly make fun of this team for having the two best players of this generation and not being able to ever make the playoffs. But Anthony Rendon is healthy for now, at least. And he's 2 years removed from being one of the 10 best players on the planet. Like, I think people kind of forget how good Rendon can be. They sort of just think he's Albert Pujols now. That is not the case. Anthony Rendon can still be a very, very good player. And they also went out, and this is a team that constantly, the thing about having Trout and Ohtani was they surrounded Trout and Ohtani with like below average players everywhere else. That's not the case with this team. They've got solid guys. They've got like Gio Urshela at third. They've got Hunter Renfroe playing a corner outfield spot now. I just think they did a good job of going out and supplementing these guys. I think the rotation's pretty good, and it starts with Ohtani. Whereas Oakland might be the worst roster in baseball by a pretty wide margin. They're starting Kyle Mueller in this game primarily because Paul Blackburn, who should be their opening day starter, got hurt in spring training. So they're starting a guy today who has pitched about 50 career innings at the major league level, has an ERA over 5, and has walked over 13% of the batters he's faced. That's just a bad formula as a starting pitcher. I think the Angels win this one pretty handily. So I am more than willing to take them on the run line at it was minus 120. It moved to minus 125. I'm not quite sure where it is now.
Minus 125. That's still the number.
Yeah. Still fine with that. Like you said, I had some bets during the course of the day that are in that article up on DraftKings Nation. We had Eduardo Rodriguez. Oh boy. Cardinals just tied the game. Not happy.
And now it's 9-5 Rangers against the Phillies now. Yeah.
Yeah. 9-5. 5-5 Toronto, St. Louis. So more runs scored in that game. Eduardo Rodriguez, that one hit as well. Tigers Rays. He went over.
Oh, that already happened.
Good work. For the rest of the night, there are some other bets I like. If you won this afternoon and want to keep going, or maybe you haven't gotten in on the action yet.
Let me jump in quickly too. That number you brought up on the Angels. So some of these team futures. It is opening day. It's a long season. That Angels make the playoffs plus 155 is still available over at DraftKings. So that is still. Yeah. So there are plenty. The team futures, I mean, it's one of 162, everybody. Like these might be, I'm not sure how maybe you would know historically how long the futures market stays open until we get enough of a sample size.
I mean, they do
obviously
adjust at certain points of the season. I
this is
feel
true.
like
They pop up.
we
throughout
might
the year.
have these for a couple more days. They'll get taken down for a bit, and then they'll reappear at a certain point. I know we get them again at the All-Star break at the very least.
Yep.
But yeah, I guess the Angels haven't started playing yet, so that's probably why that number is still available. But yeah,
Anyway,
we've got
continue.
4 or 5 games past 7 p.m. tonight. So the nationally televised game, we've got the Astros and the White Sox. Framber Valdez is a really interesting guy with these new rules in baseball. Like, he is a ground ball pitcher to the nth degree. His ground ball rate is so much higher than anyone else's in baseball. It's remarkable. And he is great at mitigating hard contact as well. Like, that's something he does very well. However, with no more shift, you have to think some of these ground balls are going to find holes a little bit more than they were in the past. He's also not someone who's a high strikeout rate pitcher. So there's a lot of balls in play when Valdez goes to the mound. He also just works deep into games because that's what he does. I think he had 25 consecutive quality starts last season where he worked at least 6 innings. So the White Sox to go over 5.5 hits off of Valdez is at plus 125. I like that a lot. I think the White Sox, like they have season after season in recent years, they also just have a roster comprised of guys who hit left-handed pitching really, really well. And that includes, like, Elvis Andrus is now on this team. I know they lost Jose Abreu, but Elvis Andrus had a 140 WRC plus last season against left-handed pitching. Everyone on this roster, aside from Andrew Benintendi, can hit left-handed pitching. So I think Valdez gives up at least six hits tonight at plus money. I like the D-backs on the money line against the Dodgers at plus 145. I know LaMarca feels the same way. We've talked about it a lot on these shows. Little underwhelmed by what the Dodgers did this season or this offseason. The top part of that lineup is still amazing. Don't get me wrong. It's tomorrow's line. Just go up a little bit. I think it's plus 145 tonight. Yeah, still plus 145. I think, again, the Dodgers are still fantastic. Don't get me wrong, but they didn't fill out the edges of this roster. And then obviously they lose Gavin Lux in the first week of spring training. I just don't think the depth is there like it has been in the past. I think the Diamondbacks are a sneaky good team this year. They really struggled against left-handed pitching last season. However, they did a good job of bringing in some veteran right-handed bats, like Lourdes Gurriel Jr., like Evan Longoria, to kind of round out that lineup and really help them within that platoon split. And then Zach Gallen was just one of the best pitchers in baseball over the second half of last season. He had a 1.47 ERA after the All-Star break with a 31% strikeout rate. He's fantastic, and he had some really good starts against the Dodgers down the stretch. So I just think this is a pretty tempting number to get the Diamondbacks at plus 145.
And the D-backs, were they a win total team that you eyed in spring training in the offseason?
Yeah. I actually got there over at 47.5. I believe it's moved to 74.5.
Okay. It's like, wow. They're not that bad.
Yeah, I guess no one liked him at that number. Yeah, they were at 74.5 to start. I believe they're at 75.5 now. But yeah, I think they're just a young team. Like, they're going to be really good sometime in the next 2 years. I think it could be this year. Maybe I'm a little early, but they're going to be good soon. They've just got too much talent.
Only 5 games tomorrow. I guess that's traditional, right? You get a bunch of off, you have your opening day, off day after all the ceremonies, early starts. Anything you might be eyeing for tomorrow on the 5 game slate for tomorrow? David Peterson is getting the start for the Mets tomorrow, not Justin Verlander, just to give folks a heads up.
You know what? I don't hate the Marlins at minus 105. I think Jesus Luzardo is on the cusp of a really, really breakout season. I think he's going to be fantastic. I would also take a look at the under in the White Sox Astros game at 7.5. Lance Lynn looked really good in the WBC. Having already thrown some like important, meaningful innings at this point in the season, I think that's going to do him good against an Astros lineup that's, don't get me wrong, the Astros are still fantastic, but when you take Jose Altuve out of that lineup, it does start looking a little short. Like they've got a great top five, but once you get past those top five batters, there's a lot of inexperience and there's a lot of like, wow, he's a good defensive player, but I'm not sure how he is with the bat at the bottom half of that order. So I think the Astros could struggle to score some runs off of Lance Lynn, whereas Christian Javier is just an absolute beast. I think he's like a dark horse candidate for AL Cy Young. I've got him at 35-1 to lead the league in strikeouts. I think he's that good. And I think he starts showing that tomorrow in that game against the White Sox.
Excellent. All right. So the baseball season is underway. Rangers 9-5. Like you said, the Blue Jays and Cardinals are now tied 5-5 in the fourth. Interleague play already starting up too. They were not shy to, and we had the Giants and the Yankees today. The league was not shy to put some interleague games on the opening day slate. Okay, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, not really. Just
I know you're not. I know you're not
far.
completely. You're not completely dialed in on the NBA slate. There's only 2 games tonight. The NBA's.
Yeah, there's not too much going on tonight in the NBA, to be honest. I feel like they kind of maybe gave baseball this day a little bit. Even like Nikola Jokic questionable to play in this game tonight for the Nuggets. So hard to really even make heads or tails of that slate till you know if Jokic is playing or not.
Right. And the Celtics losing to the Wizards the other night makes the idea or the prospects of getting a 1 seed now in the East more unlikely. With 6 games to go, they're now 3 back as opposed to 1 game back. And I'm not too sure. I'm not sure. I haven't looked at the latest injury report, but Bucks Celtics is a playoff, could be a conference final preview, but the air is kind of out of the balloon on that matchup now with the Celtics not really all that close to get the 1 seed. So it looks like everyone's going to Milwaukee. But okay, very good. We have the slate coming your way again tomorrow. We will not have baseball going on live during the show tomorrow because the earliest start is at 6:40, the Mets and the Marlins tomorrow night. But I'm sure we will figure out what we're going to dive into tomorrow night. You have the Sweat at 11 a.m. I would imagine reacting to some baseball that happened today and what might be taking place tomorrow. The Verlander news breaking in the afternoon during the first few games. That's big for the Mets and for that entire division. It could be the Braves again for a 6th straight year winning the NL East, but long way to go, as we know. Thanks to Eamon and Tom for getting us up on the air. For Gary and Thorne, Brendan Glasheen, you all have a great rest of your Thursday, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow on the slate.